plains, painting the sky in soft orange and pink. The wind whispered across the grass, bending the tall stalks as if the land itself were alive. On the edge of a small river, a young Lakota boy named Matto watched the horizon. Matto had dark, thoughtful eyes, and even at 12 years old, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who understood the land. His father, Waikasa, was a respected warrior, and Matto hoped one day to follow in his footsteps. The village was still waking. Smoke curled from the morning fires, and the soft sounds of drums and children's laughter mixed with the distant call of birds. Mato had grown up among the stories of brave men and wise chiefs, and today he felt a pull in his chest, a feeling that something extraordinary was about to happen. He walked to the riverbank, where the water moved swiftly over smooth stones. Kneeling, he cupped his hands and drank, feeling the cold rush over his tongue. The reflection of the sky rippled, and for a moment, Mato felt as if he could see something more than himself in the water. Perhaps it was a sign, he thought, though he did not yet know what. Across the river, the elders of the village gathered in a circle. They spoke quietly, their voices carrying the weight of wisdom. Mato approached carefully. Though he was young, he was allowed near because he was Wakasa's son. "Your father is strong," said an elder named Tatanka, who had fought in many battles. "But strength alone does not make a chief. A chief must understand the land, the people, and the wind that moves through all things." Mato listened intently. He had heard similar words before, but today they felt different. Today they felt like a challenge. He looked at Tatanka and nodded, silently promising that he would learn. The animals stamped their hooves, sensing the coming ride, and Matto felt a thrill of excitement. "Are you ready, Matto?" his father asked. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of pride in his eyes. "I am," Matto replied. They mounted their horses and rode out onto the plains. The wind rushed past, carrying the scent of grass, earth, and distant rain. Matto had ridden before, but today it felt different. He felt as if he were part of the land itself, connected to every hill, river, and tree. Wakasa guided Matto to a small ridge overlooking the village. From this height, Matto could see for miles. Herds of bison grazed in the distance, and the river wound like a silver ribbon through the plains. Wakasa pointed to the horizon. "The land speaks to those who listen," he said. "The wind can carry a warning or a promise. Today, you will learn to hear it." Mato tilted his head, listening. The wind rustled the grass, but he did not hear a voice. He frowned and looked at his father. "Patience," Wakasa said gently. "You cannot force it. Close your eyes and feel." Mato did as he was told. He closed his eyes and let the wind brush against his face. He felt the warmth of the sun, the steady rhythm of his horse's heartbeat, and the soft pulse of the earth beneath him. Slowly he began to notice patterns. The way the wind shifted before it touched the trees, the faint smell of rain from miles away, the distant sound of bison hooves. "Good," Wakasa said after a long moment. "You are listening. This is the first lesson of a warrior and a chief." They rode back to the village, and Mato felt a growing sense of purpose. He wanted to learn everything: how to track animals, how to fight, how to speak with the elders, and how to lead with honor. Chiefs who had walked before him. That evening, as the sun sank low, the village gathered around the fire. The elders shared stories of bravery and wisdom. Mato sat close to Wakasa, listening. One story in particular caught his attention. It was about a chief named Tatanka Ayotake, who had led his people through times of great challenge and had always listened to the wind. "Tatanka Ayotake never rushed," an elder said. "He knew that strength alone would not save his people. He listened to the land, the animals, and the spirits. He understood that every choice mattered. Mato felt a spark inside him. He wanted to be like that chief. He wanted to walk with the wind, to understand the land, and to protect his people. After the stories, Mato returned to his small dwelling. The sky was now a deep indigo, dotted with stars. He lay down and looked up, thinking about the wind, the river, and the stories of old chiefs. Sleep came slowly, for his mind was alive with thoughts of adventure, learning, and courage. The next morning, Mato awoke to a different feeling. The wind had changed. It was sharper, carrying a scent he did not recognize. He ran outside and saw smoke rising from the distant hills. Something was happening, and his heart pounded with both fear and excitement. Wakasa noticed his son's alarm. "The wind brings news," he said. "Sometimes it is good. Sometimes it is a warning." "Today, we must see for ourselves." They mounted their horses and rode toward the smoke. As they approached, Mato saw a small group of strangers at the edge of the forest. They were not from the village, and they carried themselves with caution. Wakasa raised his hand, signaling Mato to stay back. The strangers noticed them and lowered their weapons. A tall man stepped forward and spoke in a language Mato did not understand. Passing through the plains, seeking food and guidance to reach another village, Mato observed everything: the way the strangers moved, how they looked at the land, how they treated their animals. He realized that understanding people was as important as understanding the wind or the earth. A chief, he thought, must know not only the land, but also the hearts of those who walked upon it. By the time the traders left, Mato felt he had learned a lesson he could not have learned from books or stories alone. Courage, wisdom, and listening were all connected. He returned to the village with Wakasa, feeling a quiet pride. That night, as he sat by the fire, Mato thought about the days ahead. He knew he had much to learn. He would rise before the sun, ride the plains, and listen to the wind. He would train with his father, seek the wisdom of the elders, and one day, he hoped, become a chief who walked with honor and courage. The stars glimmered above, and the wind carried a soft, steady rhythm across the village. Mato closed his eyes and listened, feeling the land, the stories, and the endless possibilities stretching out before him. The journey had begun, and though he did not yet know the trials ahead, he felt ready to face them. For Mato, the plains were not just land, they were a teacher, a guide, and a friend. And the wind, always moving, always whispering, promised that he would grow, learn, and one day lead. The morning sun rose again, casting a golden light over the endless plains. Mato felt a restless energy in his chest. He had spent the night thinking about the traders, the wind, and the lessons his father had shared. Today he wanted to test himself, not with words, but with action. Wakasa noticed his son's determination as they prepared for the day. "The land teaches," he said, adjusting Mato's saddle. "Its lessons." Mato nodded, trying to hide the flutter of nervous excitement. His father had never spoken so directly before, and Mato understood that this day would be different. They rode toward the hills where the smoke had appeared the day before, but now the air carried a new challenge. The wind had shifted, and the plains seemed alive in a way that made Mato both nervous and alert. "Remember," Wakasa said, "a warrior must see, listen, and think before acting. Do not let fear guide you." Mato's heart beat faster, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. He scanned the horizon, noticing every detail: the pattern of the grasses, the movement of birds, even the distant reflection of sunlight on a hidden stream. The land spoke in subtle ways, and he was learning to understand its voice. As they crested a ridge, Mato saw a herd of deer grazing below. The animals were calm, but the wind carried a faint scent of danger. Mato glanced at his father, who nodded slightly. Hunting, Wakasa said. Not for food, but for learning. Mato dismounted carefully. His father handed him a bow, its wood smooth and strong. Mato's hands trembled slightly as he strung the arrow, but Wakasa's calm presence steadied him. Patience, Wakasa whispered. Breathe with the land, not against it. Mato crouched behind a low rise, watching the deer. He felt the rhythm of their movements, the soft rustle of their hooves, and the gentle sway of the grass. Slowly, carefully, he pulled back the string, aiming for a target that mattered more than the deer itself. The arrow flew true, landing near the herd without striking. Mato exhaled, feeling a strange mix of pride and humility. His father approached. You did not take life, Wakasa said, his voice gentle. You learned respect. That is the mark of a warrior. First part of the lesson, courage was not always about action, but about knowing when and how to act. After a brief meal by the river, Wakasa suggested they continue their journey across the plains. Mato mounted his horse, feeling the wind against his face, sharper and colder than before. They moved toward a dense grove of trees in the distance, where Mato's father said the land hid secrets for those willing to look. As they entered the grove, Mato noticed tracks in the soil, large, deep, and unfamiliar. He pointed them out to his father, who examined them closely. Wolves, Wakasa said. They are hunting together, strong, smart, and dangerous if crossed. Mato felt a thrill run through him. Wolves were powerful animals, feared and respected in the stories of his people. Seeing them in the wild was a rare opportunity. They followed the tracks quietly, keeping the wind in their favor. The wolves moved like shadows, disappearing and reappearing among the trees. Mato noticed the way they communicated, using subtle gestures and sounds, working together as a pack. He felt a growing admiration. They are like the warriors of old, Wakasa said softly. Each one strong alone, but together they are unstoppable. Mato thought of the elders of Tatanka Yotake and the importance of community. Strength alone could not protect the village. Wisdom, cooperation, and respect for others were just as important. As the wolves vanished deeper into the forest, Mato and his father decided to return to the village. But the journey back was not simple. The grove was dense, and the path they had followed had become unclear. Mato felt a knot of worry in his stomach, but he remembered his father's words. See, listen, think, fear is only a shadow. Mato took a deep breath, observing the land carefully. Flow of the water, he guided them safely back to the open plains. Wakasa looked at him with a quiet pride. You are learning, he said. The land speaks to those who pay attention. Today, you heard it. Back at the village, Mato was greeted by his friends, who were eager to hear about the day's journey. He spoke of the deer, the wolves, and the lessons of patience and observation. They listened with wide eyes, impressed by his attention to detail and his growing wisdom. That evening, the elders gathered once again around the fire. Mato sat near Wakasa, listening closely as they spoke of courage, responsibility, and the balance between strength and compassion. One elder told a story of a young warrior who had saved his village not with force, but with careful thought and courage. Mato felt inspired. As the firelight danced on their faces, Mato thought about the wind and the plains. He felt a deep connection to the land, to the animals, and to his people. The lessons of the day had taught him more than he could have imagined. Night fell, and Matto lay on the soft ground outside his dwelling, listening to the wind rustle through the trees. He thought about the wolves and the deer, about the patterns he had observed and the choices he had made. He realized that every step he took mattered, and every decision could teach him something new. The stars twinkled above, and the moon cast a silver glow over the plains. Mato closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm of the land and the pulse of life around him. He knew the journey ahead would be long and difficult, but he was ready. He would rise with the sun, listen to the wind, and continue learning the ways of a warrior and a chief. In his dreams, Matto saw himself running with the wolves, moving with the grace of the deer, and standing tall among the elders. Mato's heart swelled with determination. He understood that courage was not only facing danger but also embracing knowledge, patience, and respect. The next morning brought new lessons. Matto woke to find his father already preparing the horses and gathering supplies. Today, Wakasa said, they would visit a neighboring village, where Matto would meet other warriors and learn about their skills and traditions. The ride was long, and Mato felt the strain in his legs and back, but he welcomed it. The plains stretched endlessly, and the wind pushed against them, sometimes gentle, sometimes strong. Mato learned to read it, adjusting his movements and guiding his horse with care. When they arrived at the neighboring village, Mato was greeted warmly. The elders and warriors were impressed by his presence and calm confidence, even though he was still young. Matto observed everything: the way they trained, the way they respected their leaders, the way they cared for the land. Each detail was a lesson, each moment an opportunity to grow. By the end of the day, Matto felt both exhausted and exhilarated. He had learned new techniques, shared stories, and felt the bonds of community that connected different villages. He realized that being a chief was not only about bravery, but also about understanding, respect, and connection. As the sun set and they prepared to return home, Matto looked over the horizon, the wind carrying a soft, steady song. He knew he had more to learn, more challenges ahead, but he felt ready. The plains, the wind, and the people were his teachers, guiding him toward the path of honor and wisdom. That night, as Mato lay under the stars, he reflected on the day's lessons. He had learned patience, observation, courage, and the value of community. Land that had nurtured him. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying with it the promise of new adventures, new lessons, and the journey of a boy who would one day become a chief who walked with the wind. The morning sun rose slowly over the plains, casting long shadows across the grass. Matto stretched and felt the stiffness in his muscles from the previous day's long ride. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying the faint scent of smoke from a distant fire. Matto's heart stirred with excitement and caution. Today, Wakasa had promised Matto would face a test, a challenge to see how much he had learned and how much courage he could summon. After a quick breakfast of dried meat and berries, Matto followed his father to the horses. Waikasa's expression was calm, but his eyes were serious. "The land can teach as much in a single day as a lifetime of stories," he said. "Today you will learn from both the land and your own heart." Mato nodded, trying to steady his nerves. They rode toward a rocky area on the edge of the plains, where the hills rose sharply and the wind whistled through narrow canyons. This was a place where warriors trained to test their skills, where courage was measured not by strength alone, but by patience, observation, and clear thinking. As they approached the first canyon, Wakasa stopped. "Here," he said, "is your first trial. You must cross the canyon and reach the other side without the help of anyone but yourself. The path is not simple, and the wind will challenge you." Mato's chest tightened. He had crossed small streams and gentle hills, but a canyon was different. He looked down at the rocky slope, then at the distant ridge on the other side. He felt a mix of fear and excitement, the same feeling he had the first time he tried to follow the wolves. Observe. Think. The land will guide you if you listen. Mato took a deep breath and began carefully down the slope. The rocks were uneven, and loose stones threatened to slip under his feet. He moved slowly, testing each step before committing his weight. The wind blew stronger here, and he had to steady himself, leaning into it and letting it guide rather than push him. Halfway across, Mato stopped and looked down. A sudden gust of wind rattled his balance. For a moment, his heart raced with fear. He remembered his father's words, "Courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it." He steadied himself, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. The rocks shifted under him, but he adjusted his balance and continued. The canyon seemed endless, each step more challenging than the last. Mato noticed small signs in the land, scratches on rocks, the way moss grew in sheltered spots, and the sound of the wind changing direction in narrow crevices. Each detail helped him find a safer path, guiding him like the lessons Wakasa had taught him. Finally, after what felt like hours, Mato reached the opposite side of the canyon. He stood on the ridge, breathing heavily but filled with a quiet pride. Wakasa's voice called from behind him. "Well done, Mato! You faced your fear and trusted the land. That is true courage." Mato smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment that was deeper than any pride he had ever known. It was not about showing strength to others, but about understanding himself and his connection to the world around him. "Now," Wakasa said, "there is one more lesson today. You must descend into the forest and follow the river until you reach a sacred grove. But beware, the forest is alive and can be unpredictable." Mato nodded. He had learned patience and courage from the canyon. Trees, where shadows danced on the ground and sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden patterns. The forest was quiet at first, except for the occasional call of a bird or the rustle of small animals. Mato noticed the shapes of the trees, the direction of the wind, and the way the earth felt under his horse's hooves. Every sound, smell, and movement was a message. He remembered the story of Tatanka Iyotake, who had listened to the land to guide his people. Mato felt connected, as if he too could hear the whispers of the forest. Halfway through the grove, Mato spotted a small stream winding through the trees. Wakasa stopped and gestured. "Follow the water. It will guide you." Mato dismounted and let his horse graze near the stream. He moved carefully along the riverbank, feeling the damp earth under his feet and the cool mist rising from the water. Suddenly, he heard a faint cry, a soft sound that made his heart skip. He paused and listened. The cry came again, faint but urgent. Mato scanned the area and noticed a small bird tangled in the branches of a fallen tree. Its wings flapped helplessly and it chirped in distress. Mato knelt and gently freed the bird, carefully untangling its wings. It stayed for a moment, looking at him with bright eyes, then flew into the trees. Mato felt a wave of satisfaction. Courage was not only about facing oneself or the land, it was also about compassion and protecting life whenever possible. He continued along the stream until he reached the sacred grove, a hidden circle of ancient trees whose trunks were wide and twisted, their leaves whispering in the wind. Mato felt a strange calm here, as if the spirits of the land were present. Waikasa joined him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have come far," his father said. "The canyon tested your courage." A warrior's strength is made of all three. Mato nodded. He understood now that every lesson, every step, and every choice shaped the path of a leader. He could feel the weight of responsibility growing in him, but it was not frightening. It was a promise to protect, to guide, and to learn. As they prepared to leave the grove, Mato noticed something unusual, a small stone altar at the center, covered in symbols carved by the elders long ago. He approached it carefully, tracing the carvings with his fingers. Wakasa watched silently. "These markings tell the stories of our people," Wakasa said. "They speak of bravery, wisdom, and honor. One day, you will add your story to them." Mato felt a mixture of awe and humility. He realized that becoming a chief was not about fame or power. It was about serving the people, learning from the land, and walking with honor. The ride back to the village was quiet, both father and son lost in thought. The wind carried the familiar sense of the plains, and Mato felt stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. When they returned, the villagers noticed the change in him. Even though Mato was still young, there was a new calm in his movements and a thoughtful expression in his eyes. The elders nodded with approval, and Wakasa placed a hand on his son's shoulder with pride. That night, as the stars twinkled above, Mato reflected on the lessons of the day. He had faced fear, embraced the unknown, and acted with compassion. He had learned that courage was not the absence of danger, but the ability to act rightly in its presence. Mato lay under the open sky, listening to the wind rustle through the grass. He thought of the canyon, the forest, the bird, and the sacred grove. Each challenge had been a teacher, and each choice had shaped him. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy. But Mato also knew that he could face them. He had the land, the wind, the wisdom of his father, and the lessons of the elders to guide him. In his dreams that night, Mato ran across the plains, leaping over rocks and streams, moving with the speed of the wind and the grace of the deer. Wolves ran alongside him, their eyes bright with understanding. The sacred grove appeared in the distance, and Mato felt a deep connection to the land and to the spirits of his ancestors. He understood now that being a chief was more than leadership. It was a path of courage, wisdom, compassion, and respect. And he felt ready to walk that path step by step, learning from every challenge, every choice, and every breath of the wind. The sun rose slowly, casting a golden glow over the village. Mato awoke with a sense of anticipation. Today, Wakasa had promised he would face his first real test of leadership. The previous days had taught him courage, patience, and awareness, but leadership was something more, something that required thinking beyond himself, guiding others, and protecting his people. Wakasa met him at the edge of the village, his expression calm but serious. "Mato," he said, "a chief must act when others cannot. Today, you will face a situation that will test your judgment and your heart. You must listen, decide, and lead." Mato nodded, feeling both nervous and ready. He mounted his horse and followed his father toward the northern plains, where the tall grass waved like an ocean. The village elders had reported strange tracks and missing animals, signs that something unusual was happening. As they rode, Mato scanned the horizon. In the distance, smoke curled from a small grove of trees. The wind carried the faint sound of distant voices, mixed with the panic of animals. Mato's heart raced. When they reached the grove, Mato dismounted carefully. He saw a small group of villagers gathered around, looking anxious. Some pointed toward the forest, where the tracks led deeper into the trees. Wakasa gestured for Mato to step forward. "You will take the lead," his father said. "Listen to the land, to the people, and to your own judgment." Matto swallowed his fear. He thought about the canyon, the wolves, and the sacred grove. Each experience had prepared him for this moment. He took a deep breath and began to speak to the villagers. "Do not panic," Matto said, his voice steady. "We will find what is causing the trouble. Stay together and follow my instructions." The villagers looked at him, surprised that someone so young could speak with such authority. Matto felt the weight of responsibility, but also a quiet confidence. He had learned that courage was more than action. It was guiding others when they needed direction. Matto led the villagers into the forest, moving carefully along the tracks. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of something unusual. Matto paused, crouching to examine the ground. The tracks were large and deep, too large for any ordinary animal. "They are not wolves," Matto said. "We must be cautious. Follow me, but stay alert." As they moved deeper, the sound of rustling grew louder. Matto signaled the villagers to stop. He crept forward, his eyes scanning the shadows. Then he saw it, a group of young bison, trapped between fallen branches and a small ravine. They were frightened, stamping their hooves and calling to each other. Matto felt a mixture of relief and concern. The animals were not dangerous in themselves, but they were panicked and could harm anyone who approached carelessly. He thought quickly, remembering the lessons of patience and observation. "Do not rush," he said. Strength to lift the branches while keeping a safe distance from the bison. The animals stamped and moved unpredictably, but Matto guided everyone with calm, clear instructions. He noticed the wind shifting, signaling the approach of a storm. He used this to his advantage, guiding the bison toward a safer path that would lead them out of the ravine. After a tense hour, the last bison was free, running back into the open plains. The villagers cheered, amazed at how a young boy had led them through danger without panic or mistakes. Wakasa approached, pride shining in his eyes. "You have done well, Matto," he said. "Today you led with courage, wisdom, and care. A chief protects not only his people, but also the balance of life around him." Matto felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had faced his first true test of leadership, and he had succeeded, not by force, but by thinking, observing, and guiding others. He understood now that leadership was about more than strength. It was about responsibility, empathy, and clear thinking. As they rode back to the village, the storm began to roll in, bringing heavy clouds and sudden gusts of wind. Matto felt the thrill of the wind against his face, the same wind that had taught him so much over the past days. He realized that the land, the animals, and the people were all connected, and that his role as a future chief was to maintain that connection. Back in the village, the elders and other warriors gathered to hear Matto's story. He spoke humbly, describing the bison, the tracks, and the careful steps he and the villagers had taken. The elders nodded, impressed by his courage and thoughtfulness. One elder, Tatanka, smiled and said, "You have begun to understand what it means to lead. Courage, wisdom, and care for others. That is the path of a chief." And carried the scent of rain and wet earth. Matto thought about the lessons he had learned: patience in the canyon, awareness in the forest, compassion with the bird, and leadership with the villagers. "Today you proved yourself," Wakasa said. "But remember, Matto, the path of a chief is never finished. Each day brings new challenges, new decisions, and new lessons. You must always listen, always observe, and always act with honor." Matto nodded. He understood now that his journey was just beginning. The experiences of these past days had taught him much, but he knew there was still more to learn. As the fire crackled and the wind whispered through the village, Matto felt a quiet determination. He would rise each day, train with his father, listen to the elders, and face each challenge with courage and wisdom. He would protect his people, respect the land, and walk with honor. In the night, Matto dreamed of the plains. He ran across open fields, guided by the wind, leaping over streams and rocks. The bison he had helped ran beside him, and the wolves from the canyon watched from the trees, their eyes shining with understanding. Matto felt the strength of his ancestors, the wisdom of the elders, and the guidance of his father all around him. He awoke at dawn, feeling ready for the next day. He knew that leadership was more than a test or a challenge. It was a way of life. Every decision mattered, every choice carried weight, and every action shaped the future of his village. Matto went to the river to drink and to feel the wind on his face. He listened to the rustle of the grass, the call of the birds, and the soft movement of the water. He felt the connection between himself, the land, and the people he would one day lead. Wakasa joined him silently. The wind speaks, Matto. Wait. You are learning to walk with it. Matto closed his eyes and felt the wind brush against his face. He understood now that his journey was more than physical. It was a journey of the heart, mind, and spirit. Each challenge, each lesson, each step brought him closer to becoming a chief who would walk with honor, courage, and wisdom. The day passed quietly, with the villagers celebrating the safe return of the bison and praising Matto's leadership. He felt a quiet pride, not from their admiration, but from knowing he had done the right thing, guided by respect, courage, and wisdom. As night fell, Matto lay beneath the stars once more. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the promise of new adventures and new lessons. Matto's heart was full of determination and hope. He knew the path ahead would not be easy, but he felt ready. He dreamed of the plains stretching endlessly before him, of forests, rivers, and mountains he had yet to explore. He saw himself leading his people, facing challenges with courage, and making decisions with wisdom. And through it all, the wind moved beside him, guiding him, teaching him, and promising that he would grow into the chief he was meant to become.